on the line right now, Larry Kudlow from CNBC. Larry, we have come to know you here Mornings on the Mall as a common sense, no-nonsense guy when it comes to investing. You know, you always say, pick good companies, hang in there for the long term. You're not in there for the short term. But yet, when you see the Dow dancing around one of these 1,000 marks, people can't help, I think, but stop and say, wow, it was only 13,000 a short time ago. Now we're at 16,000. You know, am I getting into a situation where I need to worry about whether or not we're in a bubble?
You know, I don't see the bubble story, particularly in stocks. And I don't actually see the bubble story in other asset classes either. You know, I guess it's kind of like the generals fighting the last battle. Look, you're at 15, 16 times multiples for the S&P 500 for 2013 and 2014, and I know these are dependent on earnings, but if earnings chug along at just 5 or 6%, I don't know, next year, you know, you're not going to get more than 15 and a half, 16 times. So that's not cheap. Okay, it's not cheap. The long run average is about 15 times, but in a bull market, you can run that up to, 17, 18, 19, 20 times earnings, which would still give you a lot of room for substantial price appreciation. And that's kind of the way I look at it, because I think profits are chugging along, and I think the economy, you know, it's a weak economy, it's a 2% economy, but it is growing. It is growing, and I see no evidence of a double dip. And you know, you look around, I don't see any bubble in commodity prices. In fact, spot commodities are actually fallen the last 2 years. I don't see a bubble in gold, which is another place you might look.
Yeah.
Housing prices are picking up from very, very low lows, and that's not a bubble yet. There is something, I don't know if you want to get into it, but there's a leveraged loan market. It's a leveraged, collateralized loan obligations traded between banks and investors. There is a little bit of concern there,
right,
that the covenants aren't strong. So, okay, stay away from leveraged loans, but that's not where ordinary.
So you don't see any irrational exuberance there.
I don't. Now, those are famous words.
Yes.
I understand the
Alan
context.
Greenspan is on the line. He wants to jump in on this.
He's a little early in his call, but he's a very smart guy. And sure, we had finally the big tech correction. No, I don't. I just don't. One odd thing, and I don't know how you're going to resolve this. It's something to keep your eye on. The U.S. has poured, the Fed has poured a lot of reserves into the economy. They're not being used, all right? They're sitting on their balance sheet as excess reserves, quote unquote. They pay them 25 basis points to let them sit there. They're not being used. It's one of the reasons the economy is not as strong as you might expect. Nominal GDP is not as strong as you might expect. So the $64,000 question in the next couple of years really is, will those reserves eventually cascade through the economy and set up a bubble situation and set up an overheating situation? At the moment, there is simply no evidence of that. It's a longer-term consideration, but, you know, something to look at.
Larry Kudlow is our guest. Of course, you can hear him every Sunday night here at 7 p.m. on WMAL. And Larry Kudlow, you were one of the voices in the wilderness warning about Obamacare and how government's intrusion into the health insurance industry would make things worse for everyone. There's a new poll today that says 56% of U.S. adults say that it's not the federal government's responsibility to make sure all Americans have health care coverage. Has Barack Obama actually done more for free market ideology than anyone could have suspected?
Yeah, this thing backfires so much. Right. That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought of that, the reverse spin. I think people are going to think twice about lunging into these gigantic government programs. And look, let's face it, this thing lingers on. I don't see any evidence yet, for example, that the websites are being fixed. I see a lot of criticism.
Yeah, Jay Carney said yesterday, good news, by December 1st, 80% of people who go to the website will be okay. That means 20%. That's a huge number.
Well, it is a huge number, and I have to doubt the 80% number. I mean, I just have to doubt that. And I think the issue of the cancellations of insurance policies is going to be a drip, 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 drip for quite some time, whether they're individual policies or small group policies. And later on next year, we're going to face the renewal of business policies, which I think is really, you're talking about, I don't know, 100 million people, 120 million people. A lot of them are going to be dumped into exchanges that aren't ready to rock and roll. This is just a gigantic mess. And it's going to be ill-served. It's going to ill-serve insurance companies. We had to talk about this on our program last night. You know the term adverse selection. This is a big problem. The young, healthy people are the lowest participants so far, and the older, sicker people are the highest participants so far. So the risk is for these insurance companies who are playing on the exchanges that their insurance claims over time will be far greater than the premiums they're going to take in because of the boycott against high premiums. And I don't know why nobody figured this out. What is it? Between the ages of 18 and 34, I saw a study. Between the ages of 18 and 34, the average person in there sees a doctor 6 times. Between the ages of 18 and 34, 6 times. Now, is that person going to pay double or triple for a premium for a service they don't use? Of course not. And that's a gigantic part. That's one of the anchors of the assumptions of Obamacare. So I don't see how. I mean, they're going to come to the government. They're going to come to Congress hat in hand for more money. They're going to want more money to bail out Obamacare. And I can assure you that this Republican House will not give them a nickel more. In fact, they couldn't even get it through the Senate. In fact, I don't think the Democratic rebellion against Obamacare is over. It's not over. You saw the votes last week. 39 Democrats voted to extend and get another whack at their insurance policy. The Senate deal, you got, 12, 15 Democratic senators? They're real worried. I don't think that game is over either.
All right.
I think Obama's kidding himself if he thinks he's settled down his political problems, much less his technical problems, much less his insurance problems.
Time is running very short, so I just need a quick answer to all this. Janet Yellen, you okay with her as the Fed chair? Because they're going to recommend her, it looks like, out of committee this week.
She will be nominated. She would not have been my first choice. I'm more of a market price rule guy. She's more of a Keynesian. She's a very smart woman, but she's not going to depart from the Bernanke policy. So we're looking for very easy money, continue a very easy money with no slowdown in bond purchases for many, many months. And you know what? You might not even see a teensy tiny increase in the overnight Fed funds policy rate until, 2017, something like that.
All right,
Gotta
Larry,
leave it right there, Larry. Thank you so much.
QE7, QE8, QE9.
That's what you're looking at.
Thanks.